recording studios when you do a quick run through and go, that was great. Did you record it? Nope.
No.
No,
I can't do it again.
Oh, it's gone now. I have to do something else.
I'm really sorry. I remember I did this long recording session in a residential studio a long time ago. And it was great, but they really worked us like office hours. And every Friday afternoon, you know, it was in Surrey and I'm here in Bath. Yeah. And I'd be looking at the clock thinking, I want to get on the road by, 4, but we were really booked until about 5:30. Yeah. And the amount of times, the red light syndrome would suddenly be exacerbated by fear of the M4. Like, if I'm not gone within 30 minutes, my easy journey window has collapsed.
Yeah.
So can you do that again? Oh, yeah.
No. Oh. So do you, as someone that does a lot of recording sessions, do you still get the red light syndrome? That's still a thing?
It depends what it is. I mean, more and more. I mean, I don't think many of us actually go to studios these days. I ended up just basically creating a home studio. So I mean, if I just flick this round, that's the workspace and all the gear's there.
Okay.
And that way, you kind of don't get the red light syndrome because, you're on your own. And that luxury of I'll just keep doing take after take. What I kind of get is the I'm not playing as well as I should, and this is taking too much time. That kind of thing. I did a session last year. It's just for a fashion company, and they're doing some sort of big I don't know, it was a TV ad or whatever it was, and I just listened to the track. Sort of gave it half a listen and said, yeah, that'd be no problem. It's one of those things where you have to replicate what a non-guitar player has done. Mm-hmm. Yeah. We've all done that, where you just think, you get told, that this person can't play guitar too well, we just need you to polish it up. I remember giving it a half listen and thinking, oh, that's not going to take very long. It's just a couple of chords, isn't it? So I sort of quoted for a couple of hours. I think I ended up taking about 6 hours to do this, because when I sat down and properly listened to it, the guy had put a cap on in some places, detuned in other places, put the cap on and retuned. So he'd actually done about 12 separate edits. Oh man! So so there wasn't red light syndrome. There's just frustration with myself syndrome, really. So I think the red light syndrome pertains more to us these days when we're playing live, because that is the if you don't get it right, you look like an idiot. I did a gig at the weekend, and I was playing as a dep in this situation. Yeah. And I'd gone through all the keys of the tracks, and there's a song, we all play this song, Shut Up and Dance. I think everyone's played this. I've played it for the last 8 years in E flat. So in my mind, it's hardwired into E flat.
E flat?
And E flat, yeah. And I didn't realise, so long since I've heard the original, it's in D flat. Yeah. And this band happened to do it in D flat. That's the one track that we haven't talked about keys. Yeah. Oh, so of course I start playing it, and the bassist looks at me, the drummer looks at me, and I'm like, well, whoops. How am I going I'm right.
All right, how do I modulate this?
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, I think those are the situations which are more terrifying, because in a studio, unless you're working with unpleasant people, it's very much like, hey, don't worry about it, we'll do it again. Let's just keep going. I mean, I've never done like one of those Abbey Road film score sessions, anything like that, where it is, you've got the 120-piece orchestra. You've got the guitar player.
So we have to reset, guys, because Ryan's fucked up again.
Yeah, I know people that do that stuff. When I taught at the music school, we brought in Carl Verheyen. I think have you had Carl on the show?
Yes,
yeah. He's amazing. He's great. Yeah, and he told us a great story. He told us this story where, I mean, he's an amazing reader and he does all that stuff. But they sent him the score and he looked over it and went, "Oh, it seems fairly straightforward." Went to the studio the next day and suddenly found 15 pages of a completely different score, and the MD said, "Oh, sorry, we sent you the wrong thing." So God. He was suddenly in the ultimate reading situation, and he said, it was like 12 bars, and then oops, 16 bars, oops, and then he had a little bit of time and got it. But you think, man, that's
that is rough.
That is tough. He did it.
He's one of those guys that, I mean, I had a few lessons with him. I met him. He did a show in London, and I lent him some gear. I did some sessions for him, or a session for him, and he's been on here. And he's one of those guys that every time he starts a conversation with, "Oh, so I was doing a session with Ray Charles," and he starts going, "Wait, what do you mean you're doing a session with?" He said, "Oh yeah, no, I was in the studio with him," and I was like, well, I just need to process that for a second.
Yeah, it's amazing.
But it's just some of the stuff he's done is incredible.
It's kind of like a dying art, that, unfortunately. Firstly because we don't have. The music industry isn't creating those legacy artists who people play with, and the session industry is just completely different anyway. It's I knew people that worked in the 80s, and they'd tell me stories about doing 3 sessions a day, travelling across London, Bros in the morning, go west, and it's like, it just doesn't exist.
Yeah,
it doesn't exist now.
I mean, I'm sure you do more sessions than I do, but I do very few.
I think, I mean, I think it's changed so much. I think we all have that golden period when we were doing loads, and we felt like a session musician.
Yeah.
But over the years, it's just, that kind of thing has gone down, and you create other avenues instead. I think you take those skills that you learn in the studio and ultimately work with them yourself, writing, recording, and doing that kind of thing. And, where's it going next with AI? That's the next thing. Is someone going to go,
we don't need you
I need a guitar track.
Yeah.
Chat GPT or whatever, and make it sound like, I don't know. We're doomed.
Yeah, I mean, I think... I know you do a lot of teaching as well.
Not so much these days,
Oh, really?
Not hardly any these days. Yeah,
okay.
Not much at all. I really like it, but I just sort of transitioned into other things. I do one-on-one with people that really have problems they need to solve. But I don't do the school. I don't do the music schools or anything like that anymore.
I did want to touch on that. We'll circle back round to it later. I mean, just finding other avenues of income. I mean, for me, teaching is a great one, and I do enjoy it. I think it's one of those things that
I enjoy
a great deal of pleasure from, and I think it's something that is, I think it's kind of overlooked, not overlooked, but it's kind of looked down on a little, I think.
Yeah, I think a lot of people aren't. I think a lot of people aren't entirely honest about it. A lot of musicians will have you think they don't do any teaching whatsoever for whatever reason, and everybody does. Of course they do. Some people are doing it just because they're really cold and anything to make money. Some people like the holistic element, and some people are kind of in between. But I do always think, there's that thing of like, if you teach it's somehow not working. That's like a load of nonsense. It's just part of the portfolio. I always say to people, what really are musicians doing between the hours of 10 o'clock and 5 o'clock in the day?
Unless something.
Yeah, exactly. Unless you're sort of sitting in your underpants eating Watsits, watching a movie. Use the time creatively. And if you've got, for me, the golden students, when I do teach people online, the golden students are those that go, I'm free on a Tuesday morning if that's any good. And you're like,
absolutely. Yeah, well, I mean, I guess somebody in your position, you must get a lot of pros coming for you for lessons, so that would sync up. Like, Tuesday morning is great. We're both doing nothing, so
we're both unemployed. I get the clear distinction between people who I do the fingerstyle thing and they're like, I want to explore this. Some people want to do the kind of the jazz thing as well, which is great. And then I get people who are really the ones that are interesting to me and are kind of not professional musicians. They're just really, really into music and into guitar, and they're kind of late middle age, and they've reached a point where they're kind of reaching retirement or life has slowed down. The kids are grown up, etc., and they've got disposable income. And I meet them. They've got a beautiful guitar, and they're like, "I've been playing for 30 years, but it's never properly made sense." And for me, that's what I really enjoy. Kind of looking at these people, going, "I'm helping them with the thing they enjoy most in life." We get to play guitar whenever we want, but most people obviously don't. And that's where I'm like, I really want to solve their problems and picture them sitting down at home, just really, really enjoying the instrument. I love teaching the pros, but the pros you normally find it's a lesson, 2 lessons, maybe 3, and then they're gone, because they've incorporated it, they've assimilated it, and that's great. But I like to build those relationships with people where it can last for years. And their enthusiasm. I'm teaching a guy in the States at the moment, and he's great because he's just so enthusiastic. The only issue is that he wants to gobble it all up. He's kind of got 30 years of working life to make up for, and I was like, I want to learn this and this and this, and that's the skill there is to say, okay, right, we need to really give you the plan, and today we're just going to do this, and that's a really fun side of teaching for me.
Yeah, I mean, when you get an enthusiastic student that listens to music and is passionate about music and the instrument, it's not really a job. It's just
it's a conversation.
It is, and you're just like a signpost. You're like, just go there, go do that, and then when you've done that, we'll come back and then we'll have a look.
I just wish everybody was like that.
Yeah, I know. So, as someone that doesn't, I guess you don't teach a lot of kids, and you said you don't do the school thing. one question I always ask for people that do a lot of teaching or do teach is, do you find that people aren't listening to music much these days?
Well, you know what? I started off teaching in schools. I taught in a special needs school for a couple of years, which was great because those kids, they really got into it. They were, really, for obvious reasons, they were directed on one thing. And I keep in touch with some of them now, 25 years later, and they're adults playing. But I have, when I was at the college, there's a definite tipping point. So these were students of 18, 19. There's a tipping point where suddenly they stopped listening to music.
Mm.
So I started teaching, so this is BIM in Bristol. I started teaching there in 2007, and I left it last year.
Yeah.
And in 2008. 2008, everyone was like Stevie Ray Vaughan, John Mayer, Iron Maiden, and it's cool. You could actually talk music. And then it just over the years went downhill. I mean, you get people who really didn't listen to music, and I realised I'm 47, so I started there when I was about 32. So I changed as well, but I reached this point where for most people, the music they grew up on was Justin Bieber.
Yeah.
So, and I also remember doing.
Let's not knock Justin Bieber.
Can't. I mean, pop is good, but it's just they didn't have any other frames of reference.
Yeah.
So, and the other thing is people don't listen to albums; they listen to Spotify playlists. So there seemed to be this point where people kind of don't discover music themselves. They sort of either wait for a playlist or a reaction video, and you get a lot of people who love a track.
Mm.
I remember this one person in particular, loved this track, but hadn't heard anything else by the band.
Yeah.
And it's almost like his album was the Spotify playlist rather than going to the band's album. And I said to him, what else do you play from that album? He goes, I haven't listened to the album. I couldn't believe it.
I know.
There's been a definite change in the way people, hunt out music and listen to music and what music is their own. It's all different. Yeah, it's very different.
I mean, I guess, it has to have something to do with the fact because music is essentially free.
Yeah.
When I'm sure it was the same when you were growing up, you'd get your weekly pocket money or you get money from doing whatever, and you say, right, I've got 10 quid, so I'm going up to the record store, and you'd spend that 10 quid as wisely as you could.
I used to love that. So
you'd go home, you put it on, whether it was a vinyl or a CD or even a tape, and you'd flip through the sleeves, you'd read the lyrics. It's just like a whole experience that's gone.
It's gone. As soon as you remove the tactile nature of music, from going to a music shop, as you say, look at the album cover, the liner notes. As soon as that goes, it just devalued the whole thing. There's a reason why all those great albums have great covers, because the people behind it all realised there's the music, but then there's the package, and the package is kind of what draws people in. I mean, for me, I remember when I was at school, we all started playing guitar at the same time, about 13, so, young boys get that competition element. I was reasonable at football and crap at every other sport, so for me, guitar was a thing I could, maybe I could be all right on this thing.
Yeah. And
we used to get into a real competition of sort of music discovery and purchase, and we'd all go to the same record shop. I grew up in Chester. There was a shop called Penny Lane Records, a little independent. You see very few of these around now. And we'd all go in there, and this was like in the metal era and the grunge era, and we all bought the obvious stuff, but then you start trying to find increasingly obscure stuff from Seattle. Yeah. Then you go in on a Monday morning, and basically, you'd be holding whatever obscure sub-pop album you'd found on the Friday afternoon, and maybe someone else had something better. Yeah. And it really was. It was almost like a pressure to go in with the right stuff. And sometimes you'd get it wrong. I really got into Mr. Big in a huge way. But when I was 15, they kind of weren't on the cool factor. Right. But it was all right for a while because Paul Gilbert was a shred god. But when they had that number one, To Be With You, the acoustic song, when they went mainstream, I remember I went to school on the Monday morning and everyone was like, ha, 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 your band are number one, totally uncool.
Yeah,
and I was like,
you got to switch.
So that was that for Mr. Big, basically.
Yeah, that was the death of Mr. Big was the number one single. Oh man, but yeah, it's that whole experience is just gone. And whenever you went into the store and you bought yourself a bad album, it was like, oh no.
Yeah. Did you ever take them back? Did you see?
No.
I
never took them back.
Take them back. Sometimes I'd get ones. I was so aggrieved with how bad it was. I'd actually pluck up the courage to go back to the shop, and sort of say, can I exchange this, please?
No, I never did it. I remember going in, but the cool thing about the independent record stores is when you'd go in there, the people in there would help you out. Like, all right, I've got this album. You know, I love Nevermind. You know, I love Dookie. I love this.
Yeah.
Like, all right, okay. Why don't you try like this one, Out Come the Wolves by Rancid?
Yeah.
Like, all right, okay, all right. I'll go, and it's like, whoa.
Yeah.
But yeah, they recommended me some shit over the years, and yeah, I never.
So we got to clear that. We got to clear that section.
Yeah, we got to get rid of this weird Chris Novoselic side project. Let's get rid of this. We'll palm it off on him.
That was the stuff I used to go looking for.
Yeah, but yeah, Sweet 75, I think it was called. That was one of his side projects.
Wow,
yeah, it wasn't great.
It's funny though. I mean, it has all changed, and you know, I'm always wary of. You know, I'm 47. I'm always wary of sounding like that generational reactionary behaviour. I'm always wary of it, but I genuinely think it's a really, really heartbreaking thing that people aren't listening to music as they used to do. It's throwaway. You know, it's a playlist, and I mean, I still buy CDs. I still love buying CDs. That's getting harder and harder to do.
Yeah, I can't remember the last CD I bought actually.
I love buying CDs, but you know. A lot of the time, you look for something on Amazon, and it's not even on CD anymore.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, you know, the whole thing used to be you'd sit down with a cassette or a CD and you transcribe. And that's how you'd learn. You'd sort of hear something.
That was my next question.
That's how you learn. And again, you know, at music school, I saw that people really, you know, it ties in with the YouTube thing that they weren't really transcribing. They weren't really critically listening. And I remember people would come in and they'd play something completely wrong.
Yeah.
And I'd say, you know, did you work that out? And he'd go, oh, it's like, no. I watch this guy on YouTube. You know, there's always this guy on YouTube.
Yeah.
And occasionally they'd say his name, but typically it was just a guy on YouTube. And I used to say to them, that's not going to, you know, he's teaching you wrong, but at least he's maybe done a bit of ear training himself. He might not have got it right, but he's done some work. But you're actually learning his mistakes secondhand. You should do it yourself, but no, it's like YouTube thing is there immediately, and I mean, there's a load of great stuff on YouTube. Obviously, there's fantastic stuff, but I found that people didn't always have that critical filter to know what was good and what was bad.
Yeah,
and it's like if I took up fishing, I don't know a thing about fishing. You know, I'd go on YouTube and probably watch, you know, the fishing guy because he had 10 million subscribers, and I don't know if he's teaching me right or wrong, you know. Yeah. But the thing, if you're going to use YouTube, at least develop that sort of critique that you can go, well, is this a good one?
Or search around. Let's watch a few videos on the same subject, and if everybody's matching up, then we're probably on the right track. So I'd like to talk about practice.
Yeah.
So what do you do? What's your practice routine? Do you have a practice routine? What does that look like, practice? And what does it mean to you, practice?
Yeah, it's a really good thing. I think. I mean, you know, when you've been playing a long time like we have, there's a difference. There's practice, there's general maintenance, and then there's discovery. So, general maintenance is kind of when you pick up an instrument and you just noodle around because it feels good, and there's not a load of thought process taking place. It's sort of like, you know, the gym session or a run. It's just something you're doing. It feels pretty good. Practice for me is got to feel. You know what? The best quote I ever had about practice actually came from a student at BIM, and I just said to a class of students, you know, what do you feel after practice? And this guy went, and he goes, tired and sad.
Yeah, that would work.
And I thought, that's when you know you've been practicing.
Yeah.
You know you've been practicing because you go, oh man, I'm really, you know. So for me, practice, you know, it's not really can I play faster today because, you know, some days the fingers work better than others. It's more, there's a lot of stuff like timing and rhythm. Are those okay at the moment? If I want to really practice, I'll put on giant steps.
Okay.
And I'll play along with giant steps, and I'll play along with giant steps up at like 280 BPM. And I'll see if I can get ideas connected. I'll see if I can get any new ideas. I can feel if I'm playing well or not. And that's always a good guide for me. That one particular track is a good one for me to think, how am I doing? You know, where am I at the moment? And then discovery, I love the transcribing thing. You know, I love just sitting down with stuff and going, what is going on here? Not really lead stuff, just more chords and harmony.
Yeah.
You know, you sit down with the Stevie Wonder stuff and go, what's he doing? You know, that's wow. You know, so that's kind of how I do it, really. When I started off, it was just 9 hours a day of playing.
Yeah. Click tracks and alternate picking at 125 BPM.
Yeah, basically. Yeah. That's how we all did it. You know, it's funny. I got out my. I really like playing rock. You know, I play all sorts of stuff. I play everything, but I really like playing rock. I grew up with it, and I got out my. I'll show you what I got out in a minute. I was like, I'm going to do some practice from here.
Oh, nice.
And I went through the whole album, and I discovered two things. Thunderstruck is alternate picked. It's not.
Is it really? Because there's internet forums that will chat to you for weeks whether it's alternate picked or if it's picked and pull offed or if it's all hammer-ons and pull-offs.
Yeah, no, it's. I'm sure. I think I watched some footage of him live. And was like, oh, he's picking this. So that became a great picking exercise. Yeah. And the other thing I discovered is that it's nowhere near as good an album as I remember from 1993 or whatever. Yeah, I listened to the whole thing and it's like, okay, Thunderstruck's great. Money Talks is great. Mistress of Christmas, not so good. Yeah. So I sometimes do stuff like that. Sometimes, you know what I like doing more and more. I like going. Where did I start out? Where did I come from?
Yeah.
You know, what was that stuff that I played 35 years ago? Can I play it? You know, Thunderstruck was great because I was going.
Yeah. Whoop, there we go.
Yeah. So that's kind of more and more what I'm doing is sort of kind of at the moment getting back to the classic rock. Would you believe?
Yeah, I mean, I had that revelation earlier this year. I mean, I'd had lessons fairly consistently with Martin Goulding.
Yeah, it's great.
So, I mean, like nobody has pushed my technique beyond where I thought it would be the Martin.
Yeah.
But I got stuck in this little rut of everything was just technique.
Technique.
And I would try and shoehorn techniques into improvisations or solos on gigs or shows. And I'd sort of step away and go, well, what was that? And I went, well, that was actually shit. You're not playing music, you're just playing techniques.
Yeah.
So then I was like, right, well then I now need to take a huge step back. And I got an old Strat and I tuned it down to E flat and I put on Hendrix records and I just start jamming. I got no idea what the chords are, but I'm just jamming along because that's what I did right at the very start. Just put on a record and just try and jam along. Or old Chili Pepper records. Just I don't know what the chords are. I'm just going to try and slot in as a fourth member. Yeah,
that's what I did. It's great, and that again kind of ties in with the people not listening to music and listen to albums. You know, maybe they're just not doing that anymore. You know, that idea of losing a whole evening, playing along to an album. It's great. I haven't done that for a while actually. I must do it again. Just put an album on and jam along with it and just see what happens.
Just see if you can slot in as an additional member or.
I mean, I know what you mean about technique. You know, technique is something that comes and goes, and it can lead to immense frustrations, can't it? And it's a weird one because, technique invariably sort of means playing faster, cleaner, with more precision. And I really like all that, but I don't sit down and do that anymore. You know, I did when I was a kid. I was, shredded everything. But these days, for me, it's ideas and vocabulary. Yeah. What frustrates me more than not being able to execute a 16th note lick at a certain tempo is if I feel like I haven't got a vocabulary. So I play down here, I play with some great musicians, Hammond players, drummers. And I listen to their kind of seemingly endless vocabulary and I think, I felt like I played licks tonight. Yeah, and that's what pushes me more than anything these days is, firstly listen to a keys player and go, what the hell is he doing? I'll say, what was that? What was that intro you played? What was that chord? But it's vocabulary. It's like, have I got enough ideas to carry me through 2 hours? Without feeling like a chump at the end of it, And that's for me far more important these days is vocabulary. And I think when you play with other musicians, that's kind of more what they're judging you on, because everyone's got good technique. Yeah, that's a given. It's more like, are you doing interesting things, or are you doing things that fit in well? Or are you that guy who's like out of the front and then everyone's a backing band? You get plenty of those. So, I mean, I love playing with good drummers. I love it. When you can sort of
such a difference.
Yeah, and you just sit on what they
do. A bad one.
Oh yeah. And that's another thing. I think you've really developed as a musician when you can recognise bad drummers and great drummers. Yeah. As a guitarist, in particular, because if you play along with tracks, you're always playing along with. Either a sequenced MIDI drum part or a good drummer. So when you play with actual drummers and you can tell, if they're great or they're not so great, and it's how they affect your own playing as well, you know, because they bring you down all of a sudden.
Yeah.
And you're going, I don't feel great tonight.
I'm not feeling this. No. It's like... Yeah, it's not me, guys. It's I'll tell you what I started doing is I had I restricted myself just to playing, improvising, box 1 minor pentatonic, 20 minutes. You cannot go outside that little box.
Yeah.
How many ideas have you got? And it's actually, you know, you can stay there for a good 10, 15, even 20 minutes.
It's so interesting.
Without the need to break out.
Yeah, it's so interesting you say that. It's so interesting you say that, because with my sort of, you know, doing the rock or blues, because the generation we grew up with, it was all about, you know, learn the entire fretboard, learn all the modes, you know, play from position 1, all the way up, which is great. We all did it. Yeah. But many of the greatest solos, as you say, are in box 1.
Yeah.
And I've been doing that myself recently. I've been doing some, you know, on live gigs, just on like function gigs. I've been playing solos and going, I'm really overthinking this.
Yeah.
You know, I'm kind of suddenly trying to play a long, fluid line, whereas really I should just sit in the box and see how many ideas I can draw from that. As you say, you know, there's 50 years worth of ideas from Hendrix, Page, Van Halen. Well, Van Halen, obviously different, but yeah, and that's a really cool discipline, isn't it? Just to say, can I play within one box?
Yeah, and
kind of keep the ideas coming. It's almost like you know, a lot of those players, I guess, didn't really venture out of the box, but they had more ideas than I do.
Yeah,
you're like bastards.
I mean, it's it then draws the question. It's like if you can sit in box 1 and you've got endless ideas, then expanding the neck is going to be wonderful. But if you if you can't sit in box 1 and you have no ideas, then expanding that neck is going to do nothing. It's actually going to make your problems worse.
Yeah, exactly.
You need to exhaust position 1 first before you start breaking out.
Yeah.
So it's creativity, I think, is most people's issue, especially with breaking out of that pentatonic box.
I think so. I think that's where a lot of the frustrations come from. You know, people think they should break out of the box. We're told, you know, break out of the box. There's a million guitar magazine articles, break out of the box.
Yeah.
You know, break out of pentatonic jail. But really, you know, no, kind of put me in jail.
Lock yourself in. Yeah.
I want to be locked back in.
Yeah. So yeah,
it's all there. You know,
that would be. I don't think that would sell enough magazine articles. Lock yourself in box 1. No one's buying that.
It's just one page, one diagram. You know.
Yeah. Just go for it. I also want to chat about you know, what does getting better look like now?
Well, it becomes subjective after a while, doesn't it? It really does. You know, my better is completely different to someone else's better, and that changes. You know, that can change pretty regularly, or you can sit on I must get better for 2 or 3 years. For some, I mean, what is getting better? So getting better to me at the moment means faster ears. Mm-hmm. You know, I'm always working on sight reading to kind of, you know, I love those guys that can just open anything and play it immediately. I find that extraordinary. You know, very few people can do that. And I think that must be such a nice thing to attain, just being able to go, I will play that this second.
Yeah.
So I work on that. So for me, that's getting better. Writing wise, because I record a couple of library music albums each year as well. So I'm always like, I've got to get better at creatively writing stuff, not thinking like a guitar player. The big, I suppose, at the last 5 or 6 years, the big one for me was just getting better at recording and mixing and all that sort of stuff, and understanding that, because that's the direction that so much has gone in now. You know, we have to be able to do that stuff. We have to understand how it works and create music that you can put out there or send off to a company, and they're not going to go, sounds like shit.
Yeah, get that remixed.
So the great fear for me when I send off one of these albums is not the content, not someone going, it's terrible music, I'm afraid. You know, it's them coming back and saying, oh, you know, it doesn't sound that great. You know, can you tweak it or something like that? Or that's the big fear with any kind of session you do, is, you know, you send it off and they go, oh, I don't like the sound, don't like the recording, and that's the other thing. It's like expectations. You know, your expectations are, I've played it well, the part was creative, tricky, etc. Somebody might receive it and not really hear that stuff. They might just hear it's too high in the mid-range or whatever, or it sounds woolly or something. So I've kind of gone off on a tangent there. But yeah, I mean, you know, getting better is constantly shifting. And I think you reach a point where you give yourself a break and you probably say, you know what, I'll never get to that point that's in here, but I keep working towards it. And I think the other thing you stop doing is comparing yourself to other people, or saying I must sound like him, I must play like that person. So getting better is, it's always different for different people. When you teach, you learn so much about what getting better means as well. Yeah. You're always taking from other people, and their getting better might feed into your getting better as well. So, I mean, at this exact moment for me, as I say, it's, getting the ears quicker. I'm always working on chord stuff, because a lot of the time when I'm playing with a Hammond player, I don't have much space. Yeah. So I'm kind of like, I have to do everything in 2 or 3 notes. So it becomes, certain things become very precise. So it's like minor 2-5-1s. If I'm playing a situation where I'm playing rhythm in a minor 2-5-1, how many minor 7-flat-5 voicings do I have that are there instantly?
2. Or I have 2.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like how many, I normally just end up doing a minor triad, a minor third above, and then I start going, I can condense it right down. But it's in the moment, and there's that horrible feeling in the moment where you're playing in a really good situation. I mean, you just go, I just haven't got enough of that minor 7-flat-5. Yeah. I keep playing the same one, or what can I do instead of it? And so for me, getting better is more about stealing my piano player or my Hammond player's ideas. Yeah. And kind of thinking more like they do.
Okay. And when you're presented with a situation that, I don't know, let's say you've come up against something that you can't do, what's your process to getting from I can't do this to I can do this and I've nailed it?
Yeah.
I know that's situation specific, but
no, I mean it is. I mean, I had on a couple of years ago. I was doing quite a few years ago. I was doing this guitar trio with 2 great players, a classical player called Declan Zappala and a great all-rounder called John Wheatcroft. John's amazing.
John, yeah.
Jazz, rock, gypsy jazz. So we were each playing our own tunes, and there's one of his that just caused me problems because just my picking at the time was too tense. So his particular track just didn't fall under my left and right hand. And so for that, it was kind of like, I don't think I ever really got it. I think during the course of those gigs, I never felt comfortable with it. And it's time input, but sometimes you have to look at stuff, and maybe you look at stuff and go, this is actually quite far away from the way I play. Your guitar playing is your voice. And while we can impersonate a lot of the time, I think there are some situations where you just go, it's a different language. So maybe if I've got tons of time, I'll be able to really learn and incorporate the way that's played. But at this moment in time, I haven't got that language. I haven't got that particular vocabulary in place. So really, if you are going to absolutely nail something, then it's obviously time and slowing it right down. But I think, again, sometimes you give yourself a break and you go, I'm very confident with my playing. But there are certain situations where you just go, that just doesn't feel right to me. Yeah. And I think the longer you play, the longer you define yourself, the more that does kind of become an issue where you go, that particular lick, that particular picking pattern just seems at odds with how I do things. Whereas in the early days, everything's at odds with how you do things. So it's almost easier because you're always adjusting what you do to compensate for that. But the more you go on, the more your voice is in place. I play fingerstyle, I play pick style, I play hybrid picking. And those are kind of the way I approach things. But sometimes people do things differently to me. It might be they start a lick with an upstroke. And you suddenly go, what? And then you've got to recalibrate. Yeah. So I do believe there are some things where you just look at and go, I probably can't get that to 100%. Maybe I'll get it to 85 or 90, but I just have to accept that. It's like if I sat down, and flamenco is always a good one, because I can't play flamenco.
We all know the quick E major up to F shape shifting thing. We can do that, okay?
Yeah, and the fake rasguedo.
Yeah.
I remember I sort of felt semi-pleased with myself because I'd sort of come up with this fake rasguedo. I think that's how to pronounce it. And I remember a classical player said, "No, you do it the other way. You do it in reverse. You lead with the 4th finger." I think it was. It's like, I can't even fake it properly. So flamenco for me is a good one because that's a good leveler where you look at it and you go, I have to accept I can't do that.
Yeah.
Unless I spent 10 years doing it,
Yeah.
that's not going to happen. So coming back to what we were saying earlier about getting better, I think there are certain situations where you just accept and you go, that doesn't fit in my better.
Yeah.
You know, my better is going to exist for me. Better shifts over time from cleaner, faster, knowing things to what is my personal better.
Yeah.
And that's an interesting place to end up in.
Yeah. Do you think I mean, today, do you work on weaknesses or do you lean into strengths?
I try and work on weaknesses.
Okay.
I really try and work on weaknesses. One thing that really agrees me is, my pretty shit vibrato.
Okay.
I listen back to myself sometimes, and I can have this really fast vibrato, and so I've been working recently on kind of taking vibrato out, and then sort of putting it back in to try and rebuild it. It comes back to the voice thing. It's like changing my voice after so many years. You listen, you go, oh, that's really annoying. So phrasing for me is kind of the big one, trying to get absolutely right.
Yeah.
And so I don't sit down and go, I'll practice vibrato. It's an ongoing, continuous element where every time I'm recording or playing, I'll think to myself, how does the vibrato sound at the moment? Am I still doing that too fast vibrato, or am I kind of calming it down, and getting better?
Yeah, that's the thing. I think the vibrato is something that doesn't get spoken about enough, and I think adrenaline plays a huge part of how does your vibrato sound on a gig. Like if you're really rocking out, you're like, oh, that's probably a bit too aggressive. But yeah, I had a really great chat with Mike Goodman last week about vibrato, and his vibrato is just like, it's like a bird singing in a tree. It's just wonderful. Everything he does with his vibrato is just wonderful.
Yeah.
And so I really wanted to pick his brains about it, and he said it was the first lesson that he ever had from I think it was a family friend who lent him a guitar. He said, work on vibrato. It was one of the first things he said. And he said, I've always sat there and tried to work on it, looking at the B.B. King kind of flutter.
Yeah.
The Eric Clapton with one hand, just up and down and side to side, like the classical cellists and violinists. And
there's the weird Vi kind of.
The Vi one, the circle one. He says, I don't do that very much because people will look at that and go, he's just doing Vi.
Yeah.
But he said, just, I think working on vibrato, it's like it's like your fingerprint. It's what defines you, I think, a massive part of your sound.
And you can do a load of great playing, but that vibrato, if it's not right, just takes away from it all, unfortunately. The thing I like about playing jazz gigs is there's no vibrato. There's no bending.
With gauge 13 strings, you can't.
It's just, you don't have to worry about that kind of phrasing. So I'm going to sound all right tonight.
It's a bad vibrato. I describe bad vibrato as a really nice cake that's been iced in dog shit.
That's a good way of looking at it.
It doesn't matter what you play. It's that finishing vibrato. It's like, nope, that guy can't play. Or
the thing is, when you hear a terrible vocalist with bad vibrato, you hear it immediately.
Yeah.
Or a sax player with awful vibrato, and as guitar players, we should be the same. But as you say, I don't think most people think about their vibrato.
No, I don't. No one thinks about it enough, I don't think.
Yeah, they just think it's something you do. As you say, it's like it's something you put on a note, and as long as it's there, that's fine.
Yeah.
But when you hear it, vibrato is so hard. So hard.
That's very, There was another question I was going to. BIM. I'd love to know why you left BIM, because I saw you put a post up, and I was like, that'd be interesting to discuss with you.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I mean, I only ever taught at BIM about a day a week. It ran parallel to everything I do in my working life, and as with all these things, sometimes I enjoyed it, sometimes I really didn't enjoy it. But I mean, really, that's a case of a business shifting for me in unacceptable ways. And a lot of us, they made a lot of people redundant, which, I thought was particularly poor anyway. And, there were certain contractual things that they started trying to enforce. And I got to a point. My dog was very sick last year. So I was going through a lot of bad stuff with the dog. I love dogs, so for me that's difficult. And, they weren't really that accommodating about that kind of thing. And sometimes when you do have those things in life, you just reevaluate and you go, you know what? I don't want to be here.
Yeah.
I don't want to be doing this. The nature of music schools these days has changed, even more so from where they started off anyway. So they're very commercially oriented. So I was getting people who've been playing a year or two, and I've got nothing against people who've been playing a year or two, but they should probably not be on a music degree, So the students themselves would get overwhelmed and not turn up to things. So here's a big shift. Shift. Those schools, the nature of that stuff has changed completely anyway. So as I said, in 2008, you talk about SRV, all these kind of people. Now it's like, who do you listen to? Well, I don't. And you think, well,
what's he doing here?
The point? What's the point? There's a fly in here, by the way. So there's
that's right. Yeah,
that's why. Yeah. So it was just a shift, and a lot of my friends felt the same about it. They just thought, don't do other things. Don't need to do this. Why do it? And I think that applies across the board.
Yeah, I know. I've spoken to a few people at other schools who've said similar things. I don't know. Can you talk to some of the changes that occurred that you didn't really agree with?
Well, I think as soon as you, commercialise music education to a huge degree, you start ending up with problems because, it becomes a product and you have a client. And the net result there is the client expects the product they've paid for, regardless. So somebody might do particularly badly, but they will still get the product.
Okay.
And as soon as you start bringing in that kind of top-tier financial structure, management in the middle who, they don't know a thing about guitar playing or music performance or the music industry. Yeah. They're just feeding from the top through the management, telling people to do these things. And ethically, you just start going, I just genuinely don't think that's right. You have managers who are on salaries of 50, 60, 70 grand a year, having a good old time.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of us who teach just ended up feeling like we were on the shop floor.
Yeah.
And as practitioners, it's like in politics, expertise is not really valued in the world of politics. It's almost frowned upon. And it kind of was getting to that point where we felt like expertise was almost a burden, because expertise comes with certain associations and expectations. Yeah. Whereas if you can hire people who have gone through the system at half the rate, brilliant, So then when it started out, the guys that started it, Bruce Dickinson was great. Bruce hunted me out and said, I'd really like you to teach here and be the head of guitar. And I was like, great.
Wow.
He got it. I got it. It was an honour. And we had fun. It rolled along well. Now, I just got latterly, I was like, no matter what I tell these people, they've got no interest.
Yeah.
I'd say, I've just done this, I've just done that. They're like, So, I came to really loathe it.
Yeah.
I kind of, I get to a point with some things, and I will just go, whatever. I don't really worry about too much in life, really. And I spoke to my wife about it. She was like, "Oh, yeah, don't fuck themselves." Yeah. Great. A number of us did. Some people are still there, but a lot of us did. And seeing people made redundant, you're like, oh, what? Good people, for no good reason. So. Yeah.
Shocking, terrible.
Yeah, it's shocking. It's it's kind of a shame because those schools could have been great places.
I mean, they were. I attended the ACM in, I think it was 01, 02 or 02, 03.
Totally different.
And it was, it was the heyday, I would say. Guthrie was there, Dave Kay, Jamie, Eric Roach, Pete Callard. It was like the faculty. That's just the guitar department. Mike Sturgis, Pete Riley. It's like it was just everybody who, like, these guys were obviously off doing huge sessions and tours. They'd teach here at the school during the day.
Yeah.
And you just felt like you just got the best possible education that you could possibly get.
Yeah.
And I went to the ACM about 2 months ago. I had a walk round and I was like, fuck me, this place is falling apart.
Wow.
And it's like all the amps don't work. Some of the amps don't work. The acoustic paneling is all falling off. It's gaffer taped up. It's like
the resources thing. Yeah, the resources thing is where you start going. I can see what's happening. No money's put into resources, which is where it should be going, and that's one of the places where you go, hang on a minute. This is the stuff that you really need. Yeah, I totally get that. Yeah.
So I mean, it's a shame because, like you said, the buildings are there, the rooms are there, the people are there willing to teach.
Yeah.
Is the coursework good enough? I don't know. It sounds from what you said and what from others have said that it's just not up to scratch anymore.
I mean, yeah, I know. I mean, I look back at those schools and I nearly went to one back in about 1998. I sometimes wonder what would happen if I did, but there was an excitement about those places then. As you say, you had amazing people, and that's where you really learn. But I think it's just changed so much. That sort of higher education, music higher education, just changed dramatically. It really did.
Do you think
There is.
do you think the availability of, I don't know, because you can get guitar lessons from Mike Stern, Josh Smith. Do you think that's having an impact on these schools?
No, because most people that go to those schools don't know who those people are.
All right.
You know, you go to those schools to discover who those people are, and maybe you know afterwards you take lessons with those players. But a lot of people don't know who they are, so I don't think that's having an impact on those kind of places.
Okay.
Because a lot of people are going there and actually discovering what music is.
Yeah.
But I find it fascinating that you can have lessons with those people so easily now. It's crazy.
Wonderful. Like I looked at Mike Stern. He's like, yeah, I'm still doing lessons throughout June. I'm like, fucking, are you really? I was like, how much is it? It's like $125 for an hour's lesson. I was like, shit, man, that's
easy, isn't it?
That's a bargain.
That is a bargain. It's really funny.
But then you have to think, like, what do I want Mike Stern to teach me? It's like, shit, I've only got an hour. We'll probably have to go through chromatic ideas. So let's, But you don't want to waste that hour.
I mean, I think these days, you know, if you knew what you wanted, I mean, I don't know how much is a degree's what, like 10 grand plus accommodation. I mean, the accommodation is a crime because people are spending, you know, 1,400 quid a month to live in a flat in the middle of Bristol with, you know, 100 people around them is unreal, but it's become normalised. Can you imagine funneling all that money into one-on-ones? Actually, a friend of mine, we had a pre-pandemic, we had an idea we were actually going to work on. So he had an agency, so he went to BIM and ACM, and he went out and he formed a successful agency, and he had bands on cruise ships. I think he had like 150 bands on cruise ships. Wow. And we were saying, you know, a more kind of holistic approach would be like a tiny school. Someone will probably steal this idea from me now. Basically, a tiny school where you teach everybody the essentials, and once they're there, you form them into a band, and then literally when they graduate, you say to them, "Here is work. You're on a cruise ship, and you can spend as long as you like on that, but you've got an income, and you've got experience." Rather than you've got a music degree now, off you go. You know, most people leave and go, what do I do now? You know, and they find that a lot of people don't want to, you know, they won't answer questions anymore. And so we kind of really thought about this. He had a studio facility. We really thought you could have a cohort of 15 people. Yeah. You know, and you just really, over the course of a year, kind of rinse them on what musicianship is, the attitude, the professionalism, timing, repertoire, all that sort of stuff. And how cool would it be at the end to say, all right, you 4 people who are now a band are going to start working immediately and be earning actually pretty good money. Yeah. You know, but
I mean, I definitely think that's because I mean, I had a similar idea, and I think that's the way it's going. And I had a chat. Do you know Pete Roth?
Yes, I know who he is. I haven't met him, but I know who he is. Yeah,
I had a chat with him. He was on here a couple of months ago, and we spoke about because he spoke about the ACM and just he said it's just fucking shit. It's awful. I had arguments with management staff. I had people teaching. I had teachers teaching theory classes who didn't know theory.
Yeah,
and I said, well, surely the solution is that we just set up these little small music academies
which is where they all came from.
Yeah,
I mean, you know, ACM started in a room above Anderton's.
Yeah.
And it's really just the economy of scale. I mean, the problem with the schools is as soon as the venture capitalists became involved, and they became multi-million-pound endeavours, the resourcing is terrible because it's just all about profit, you know. And the management in the middle don't care about that. They don't care about the shop floor, and that's what really sickened me. Yeah. Is you'd say, you know, can we get some new valves? It's like, you know, I'll talk to so and so.
You have to fill out a request report. I but these are. I need these. This is like asking for new toilet paper. We need this.
And that's why I think, you know, the healthy thing would be to go back to where these places came from, where you've got that, you know, small cohort of people. And I mean, I'd always say to people, if I was starting out or if I was teaching people now, I'd say, I know everybody wants to do originals, which is great. We all do. You know, I write a lot of original music, but I'd say have a band. Your originals band should also be a covers band. Yeah. You know, that's the smartest thing you can possibly do is have a band that works 2 nights on a weekend, kind of pays for your week, and then the rest of the week you could write. I mean, it's kind of what the you know, worked all right for the Beatles, really. You know, but that wasn't really, that's not really the thing. And I think it'd be so cool if you did have like a small school with multidiscipline, and you just say, right, well, we'll mix and match people, train you up, and at the end of it, we've got a link to the agency. You're going to be playing 5-7 nights a week.
Yeah.
And you'll be doing that year round. I mean, that's it. That's employment. That's fun.
Yeah.
Not, okay, you've got your product now, it's McDonald's or not much else. It's terrible. I hate seeing people graduate and then going,
what do I do now?
What do I do now?
Yeah. I mean,
no one's answering my emails. What do I do?
I think that's a failure on the school's part. If you're leaving the school and you don't know what to do next, you should have, whether you implement it or not, there should be some sort of plan. Like, we'll put a little function band together, we'll shoot a video, we'll do some recording, we'll punt it out to a few agencies, cruise ships, if you want to do that kind of thing.
Yeah. Instead, it's just, it's here's your information now. You're done.
Yeah. Last question is, if you had to do it all over again, what would you do differently?
What would I do differently? Yeah, I mean, I do think about this sometimes. So I started out and spent a good portion of time working in the solo fingerstyle world. Yeah. And that was great. I enjoyed it. And it got me, I worked. But I would probably do more around that.
Okay.
Then. And I'm going back 20 years here. But I'd probably, ironically, I would have done the function band thing then. And worked with musicians from different genres rather than always being a soloist. So it was great. I played a lot of big gigs and played with some amazing people. But you're always playing with guitar players, and solo guitar players, which I don't do that much now. Back then, I would have said I'll run this in parallel with this, playing with other musicians and just having a working band, because I think that's the best way to do it. Have a specialism. But have a generalism alongside it. Yeah. And I know a lot of us run as specialists in all this side of thing. And the problem with being a specialist is, you have peaks and troughs. So I'd have sometimes I was really busy with solo stuff, and then it'd go really quiet. Whereas if I had the generalism on the side, I could have been working constantly alongside that. So I'd have done that. And I'd have also said, don't expect to be playing the same way and enjoying playing that way for the whole of your life. When I was 24, I thought I'd only ever be a solo fingerstyle guitar player, and that would be it. Because I'd seen people like Tommy Emmanuel, and you go, well, that's, it works. But over time, you go, I want to do other things anyway. Yeah. And the fact is, it's extremely hard now, in particular, just to play guitar on its own. And I look back at myself then and go, it's a little bit self-indulgent. Okay. Solo guitar, you kind of, in terms of technique, you're always looking for the highest possible level of technique. When you're playing endless guitar festivals, you look out and you might see 300 faces, and they're all blokes of a certain age staring at you, looking for every single mistake. And then occasionally there'll be a few wives there. And so I'd go back and say, okay, probably try and run a few things in parallel. To get a better view of the musical world. And I enjoy being more like that now, to be honest. Just playing lots of different people in different situations. Great. Well, thank you very much for your time, man. Thanks. It's been a real pleasure. Thank you. Likewise. Hopefully there's a few